Snow hammered against the glass windows of the Mercer penthouse, but the storm inside the living room was far colder. Avery Collins stood barefoot on the marble floor, one hand pressed to her pregnant belly, the other gripping the crumpled test results she had found hidden in Derek's briefcase. Her breath shook as she whispered, "You lied to me. You forged this." Derek Mercer didn't even flinch. In his tailored charcoal suit, he looked more like a banker closing a deal than a husband facing the mother of his child. "I did what I had to do," he said calmly. "You're not trapping me with a baby, Avery. Not anymore." Before she could respond, Sabrina Cole stepped out from behind him, wearing Avery's silk robe as if it were a trophy. The smirk on her face was a blade. "You should leave," she said. "Derek and I have plans tonight." Avery's heart pounded. "I'm 6 months pregnant. Doing." Damon. Derek opened the penthouse door, letting the winter air slice through the room. "Not my problem. Get out." The gust of wind hit her like a slap. Avery staggered, nearly losing her balance. The baby kicked sharply, as if reacting to the chaos. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered. "That sounds like a you issue," Sabrina said, and with a shove to Avery's shoulder, she pushed her out into the hallway. Avery caught herself on the railing, but the jolt shot pain up her spine. The snowstorm outside wailed through the open door as Derek closed it in her face. The hallway was freezing, silent, merciless. Avery pressed a hand to her belly, trying to breathe, fighting the rising panic. Her vision blurred as she whispered to her unborn child, "I won't let this destroy us. I promise." She started down the stairwell, one trembling step at a time, unaware that a camera across the hall had captured everything, and the woman who owned it would guard that footage for 8 long years until the night truth finally exploded. And on that night, Derek Mercer would freeze, his wine glass slipping from his hand, as he stared across a glittering ballroom and whispered, "Is that her?" Snow clung to Avery Collins's hair as she stepped out of the building, each flake stinging like tiny shards of glass. Her thin sweater was no match for the Manhattan winter, and the icy wind tore through the fabric as if mocking her. She held her belly with both hands, trying to shelter her unborn child from a world that had turned vicious in a single night. The streets were almost deserted. The city that never slept felt strangely silent, smothered by the storm. Taxis didn't stop. Buses crawled by with limited service flashing on their screens. Her breath fogged the air as she walked, leaving a trembling trail behind her boots. Avery reached the corner of West 63rd Street and leaned against a lamppost, panting. A cramp shot across her abdomen, slow but fierce. "Not now," she whispered. "Please, not now." She was only 6 months along. Any stress could push her body too far. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with numb fingers, hoping, praying it was someone, anyone, who could help. But the screen displayed only a notification. Health insurance cancelled effective immediately. Derek had cut it off the exact moment he shoved her out. Her throat tightened. Her baby deserved better than this. A figure approached from the opposite corner, Mrs. Davenport, the elderly neighbor from across the hall. She wore a heavy wool coat and carried a grocery bag. The snow made her hair glow silver under the streetlight. "Avery," she called, squinting. "What are you doing out here dressed like that? It's freezing." Avery tried to answer, but her voice cracked. Mrs. Davenport hurried closer, her concern turning sharp as she noticed Avery's swollen belly and red eyes. "Did he?" "Oh, dear." The older woman shut her eyes briefly, as if absorbing the cruelty. "Come with me. You can stay at my place for the night." Avery shook her head. "I can't. He'll—" She stopped. Derek had already taken everything. What more could he do? But pride was a stubborn thing. Avery had been humiliated enough for one lifetime. "I'll find somewhere," she whispered. Mrs. Davenport touched her arm gently. "You don't have to do this alone." Avery offered a broken smile. "I already am." The bus screeched to a halt beside them, its doors hissing open. It was nearly empty, the kind of late-night ride filled only with ghosts and stragglers. Avery climbed aboard, gripping the railing as another sharp cramp twisted through her stomach. She winced, but forced herself to remain upright. She needed distance, any distance from Derek. The driver barely glanced at her. "Where to?" "Queens," she murmured. "Anywhere in Queens." He nodded, closed the doors, and the bus lurched forward into the storm. Avery slid into a seat and pressed her forehead against the cold glass. The city lights blurred, streaks of gold and white melting into the darkness. Her mind replayed Derek's words. "You're not trapping me. Get out." Sabrina's shove. The door slamming. Her chest tightened with a pain that had nothing to do with the cold. A soft kick nudged her ribs. She placed her hand over the movement. "It's just us now," she whispered. "But I will protect you. I swear I will." The bus rumbled over the bridge, the skyline fading behind her. She didn't see Mrs. Davenport, standing on the snowy sidewalk, clutching her grocery bag, watching the bus disappear and deciding, right then, to keep the footage from her door camera safe. Safe until the day it would be needed. And that day would arrive sooner than Avery could ever imagine. The motel room smelled faintly of bleach and loneliness. Avery Collins sat on the edge of the narrow bed, hands trembling as she peeled off her wet sweater. The heater rattled loudly, blowing air that was barely warmer than the storm outside. She placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the ache that had settled deep inside her since Derek threw her out. The room flickered with yellow light from the buzzing ceiling bulb. Snow crusted the window frame, the glass so thin she could feel the cold radiate through it. She didn't know how long she had been sitting there, staring at her phone, watching the screen stay blank. No messages, no calls, not even spam. Her body shook with a mixture of cold and exhaustion. She curled around her belly and whispered, "We're safe for now. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." But even as she said it, a fresh cramp seized her abdomen. A sharp pain tore down her side. Avery gasped, clutching her stomach. This wasn't from stress anymore. Something was wrong. She tried to stand, but another wave knocked her back to her knees. Panic erupted in her chest. She was alone. No car, no insurance, no one to call. Derek had made sure of that. She grabbed her coat and stumbled outside into the freezing air. Her breath fogged violently as she half walked, half ran toward the street. The snow had turned into icy slush, soaking through her thin shoes. Another contraction hit, forcing her to lean against a rusted railing. A car appeared at the end of the street. She waved desperately. "Please, please!" Her voice cracked, but the headlights slowed. The car pulled over, and a middle-aged woman rolled down her window. "Are you all right?" the woman asked. "Hospital," Avery choked. "Please, I think the baby's coming early." The woman unlocked the door immediately. "Get in." "Hold on." The ride blurred into flashing streetlights and muffled cries. Avery braced herself against the seat as pain built and broke through her like a storm. When they reached the emergency entrance, nurses rushed to her side, pulling her onto a gurney. "How far along?" one asked. 6 months, Avery gasped. "Something's wrong." They wheeled her into a room filled with bright lights and sterile metal. A doctor approached, brows tight with concern. "We'll do everything we can, Avery. Stay with me." Hours felt like seconds. Seconds felt like hours. The world dissolved into monitors beeping, nurses shouting numbers, the doctor telling her to breathe, breathe, breathe. Finally, a tiny cry pierced the air. Thin, fragile, fighting. Avery's heart cracked open. The nurse lifted a small bundle wrapped in a warm blanket. "He's early," she said gently, "but he's breathing. He's strong." Avery sobbed with relief, reaching out her shaking hands. But before she could hold him, the doctor stopped her. "Not yet," he said softly. He needs the NICU immediately. He's stable, but very vulnerable. Avery nodded, tears blurring her vision. Please, please take care of him. We will. Tool. The nurse rushed the baby away down the corridor. The doors swung shut behind them. Avery lay back against the pillow, exhausted, terrified, but alive, and she had no idea that someone else had been admitted to the same hospital that night, someone whose name would change the course of her life again. Because in another wing of that very building, Elias Grant had just learned that his own daughter had gone missing in the snow. Avery Collins was discharged from the hospital 3 days after giving birth, but her son remained in the NICU, small and fragile under the soft blue lights. The doctor assured her he was a fighter, but the uncertainty carved a hollow space inside her chest. She spent every visiting hour at his bedside, whispering promises he was too tiny to hear. When she finally stepped back into the freezing air outside the hospital, reality hit her with brutal clarity. She had nowhere to go. The woman who had driven her to the ER, Mrs. Laura Benson, had offered help, but Avery couldn't bear the thought of relying on a stranger again. She had trusted Derek. She would not make that mistake twice. So, she found the cheapest listing on her cracked phone's browser and took a bus to Queens. The building sat between a laundromat and a pawn shop, bricks crumbling, lights flickering. The kind of place no one chose unless they had no options left. Inside, the hallway smelled of fried onions, cigarette smoke, and exhaustion. The landlord, a tired man with deep lines in his forehead, led her to a studio unit on the 3rd floor. The entire space could be crossed in 6 steps. A single window rattled when the wind blew. The radiator hissed like an angry cat. The walls were so thin she could hear a couple arguing next door and a baby crying somewhere down the hall. Yet despite the noise and the peeling paint, it was shelter. It's $5.70 a month, the landlord said. Cash preferred. Avery swallowed. She barely had enough for 2 weeks of groceries, but she signed the paper anyway. Her baby needed a place to come home to, no matter how small. When the door finally closed behind her, she leaned her forehead against the wood and breathed. She had made it through the storm. She had survived Derek, 1 day at a time. That was all she had left. That evening, after visiting the NICU again, she returned to the apartment, carrying a plastic bag with ramen, a cheap loaf of bread, and a can of soup. The fluorescent hallway lights buzzed overhead like trapped insects. Inside her unit, the radiator groaned to life, flooding the room with uneven heat. She set her groceries on the counter and sank onto the sagging mattress the previous tenant had left behind. It smelled faintly of mildew, but she was too tired to care. She began scrolling job listings on her phone, but her vision blurred. She had worked as a barista before Derek pulled her into his world, a world she now realized had never been hers. She needed something fast, something flexible, something that would allow her to be at the hospital every day. Through the thin walls, she heard a neighbor slamming a cupboard. A dog barked below. Pipes clanged overhead. Life here was noisy, messy, imperfect. But in a strange way, it felt more honest than anything she had lived through in the Mercer penthouse. A sudden knock jolted her upright. Avery froze. No one knew she lived here. She approached the door cautiously. Another knock. "Who is it?" she whispered. A voice answered, quiet but firm. "Miss Collins? It's about your son." Her heart stopped. She unlocked the door with trembling fingers and pulled it open. A man stood there in a dark coat dusted with snow, his expression grave. "I'm from the NICU," he said. "You need to come with me, now." There's been a complication. The hallway outside the NICU smelled of disinfectant and fear. Avery hurried behind the man who had knocked on her apartment door, her heart pounding in her throat. Every step felt like walking underwater. When they reached the neonatal unit, the nurse on duty pulled her aside gently. "He's stable now," she said. "His oxygen levels dipped, but we caught it in time." Avery nearly collapsed with relief. She pressed a hand to her heart, whispering, "Thank you. Thank you so much." The nurse touched her arm in reassurance. "He's a fighter, just like his mom." For the next several days, Avery spent every hour allowed sitting beside her son's incubator. She talked to him, sang softly, traced invisible circles above the glass, as if her touch could reach him. But she couldn't stay forever. She needed income, anything to afford formula, diapers, and the mounting hospital bills. On the fourth day, she returned to her apartment exhausted, carrying a notebook filled with plans she wasn't sure she had the strength to follow through with. The radiator sputtered, coughing heat into the tiny space. A leak had soaked part of the carpet overnight, and her groceries still sat untouched where she'd left them. She dropped onto the mattress and rubbed her forehead. She needed work. A knock sounded next door, followed by muffled voices. The neighbor, a single father named Jordan, stepped into the hallway carrying a toolkit. He noticed Avery struggling to fix the loose cabinet hinge in her kitchenette. "You need help?" he asked. She hesitated but nodded. He stepped inside and examined the broken hinge. "This place is falling apart," he muttered. "How long have you been here?" "A few days." "Oh." He tightened the screws, but the wood split. Avery sighed. "Nothing in here works." "Old buildings," he said with a shrug. "You should ask the landlord for maintenance. I doubt he'll do anything." Jordan gave her a sympathetic look. "Well, good luck." After he left, Avery stood staring at the damaged cabinet. The jagged wood, the uneven surface, something about it bothered her. She grabbed a sanding block from a box she hadn't unpacked, one of the few things she'd kept from her old life. A small set of tools she once used to help Derek remodel a desk. He'd tossed the project aside, but she had loved working with her hands. She began sanding slowly, smoothing the splintered edge. Then she adjusted the hinge placement, drilled new holes using a tiny multi-purpose tool, and realigned the cabinet door. It clicked shut perfectly. Avery blinked. It had taken her less than 15 minutes. She opened it again. Smooth. Closed it. Silent. For the first time in weeks, she felt something spark inside her, something like pride. She continued working. She fixed the loose shelf, reinforced the wobbly table legs, repaired the peeling laminate strip near the sink. Each fix made her breathe easier, grounding her in a way nothing else had since Derek shoved her into the snow. By sunset, the apartment looked better, still run down, still cramped, but somehow warmer. Hers. A place for her son. A knock startled her. Jordan peeked inside, stunned. "Whoa, did you do all this today?" Avery flushed slightly. "It's nothing. I just fixed a few things." "Nothing," he laughed. "This looks professionally done. My cousin's looking for someone to help with small apartment repairs. You interested?" "He pays under the table." Avery's breath caught. "Money. A chance. A starting point." "Yes," she said softly. "I'm interested." Jordan nodded. "I'll send him pictures. He'll be impressed." He snapped a few photos, grinning. But after he left, Avery's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The text read, "I saw what you did to the apartment. I'd like to meet. There's work, real work, waiting for someone like you." A second text followed. "Come to Grant Tower tomorrow at 9 a.m. And that was the moment Avery's life took a turn no one, least of all her, could have imagined. Grant Tower rose over Park Avenue like a monument carved from ambition itself. Morning sunlight reflected off its glass walls, scattering gold across the sidewalk as Avery Collins stepped out of the bus, clutching her thrift store coat more tightly around her. She felt painfully out of place among the polished shoes and pressed suits entering the building. Even the revolving doors hissed with a kind of elegance she was certain she didn't belong near. But someone had invited her here. Someone who knew what she had done in her tiny Queens apartment. Someone who believed she had real work waiting for her. Still, As she stared up at the tower, doubt crept in like a cold draft under a locked door. Inside, the lobby was a world entirely separate from hers. A waterfall feature trickled over polished slate. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Employees strode past holding MacBooks and iced lattes, their pace purposeful but smooth. They looked like they'd been born knowing their place in the world. Avery kept her head down and approached the reception desk. "Hi," she said. I got a text telling me to come here at 9. The receptionist raised a brow. Not unkind, but curious. "Your name?" "Avery Collins." She typed quickly, then paused. Her expression shifted. "Ah. Someone from the executive floor requested your visit." Avery blinked. "Executive, 48th floor. Mr. Hale's assistant will meet you." "Yes." Avery swallowed hard as she stepped into the gleaming elevator. She didn't know anyone named Hale. She didn't know why a powerful man in a skyscraper would want to meet a woman who could barely afford bus fare. All she knew was that she had said yes because her son needed a future, and this might be the only chance to build one. The doors opened to a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. A woman in a charcoal blazer approached with a tablet in hand. "Miss Collins? Right this way." "Ooh." They entered a conference room washed in sunlight. Models of architectural designs lined the shelves. She recognized materials: reclaimed wood samples, marble pieces, fabric swatches. Her fingers twitched with familiarity. Then a man stepped inside, tall, sharp in a navy suit, salt and iron hair, eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Collins," he said. "I'm Adrian Hale." She had heard the name. Co-founder of Grant Tower, multi-millionaire. Partner to another billionaire, Elias Grant. Avery felt her throat tighten. He placed her repaired cabinet photos on the table. "You did this?" he asked. Yes. It's precise, clean, efficient. You have an eye most people need years to train." Avery flushed, startled by the praise. He continued, "I run a small space revitalization program. We redesign old units in low-income buildings for tenants who can't afford major renovations. I need someone who understands both limitation and possibility. Someone like you." Heza read. Avery's breath caught. "You mean work?" "Actual work. Paid work," he clarified. "Good pay. Flexible hours. You can visit your son whenever you need." Her knees weakened. This was more than an opportunity. It was oxygen. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," he replied simply. She nodded, tears burning hot behind her eyes. "Yes, absolutely, yes." For the first time in months, hope didn't feel dangerous. As she left the tower, the city felt different, brighter, almost welcoming. But halfway across the lobby, her phone buzzed. It was the hospital. Her blood ran cold. "Miss Collins," the nurse said, her voice trembling. "Your son. Something's happened. You need to get here immediately." The taxi ride to the hospital felt like a long tunnel made of sirens and panic. Avery pressed a hand against her chest as if she could physically hold her heart together. The nurse's words replayed in a loop. "There's been a change in his breathing. We're doing everything we can. Please hurry." Her son had been born too early, too small. His lungs were delicate, fragile things still learning how to work. Every day had been a tightrope walk between hope and fear. But this sounded worse. When the taxi rolled to a stop, Avery threw money at the driver and sprinted inside, her breath coming out in broken clouds. The NICU doors opened with a soft mechanical hum, but the tension in the room hit her like a wall. Nurses moved quickly, speaking in low, urgent tones. Machines beeped in unpredictable rhythms. Avery forced her feet forward. "Where is he? Where's my baby?" Nurse Ellen turned, her expression weary but steady. "He's right here, sweetheart. He had a breathing episode. It happens with preemies, but we stabilized him." Avery moved to the incubator. Her son's tiny chest rose and fell in shallow, careful breaths. The oxygen tubes looked bigger than his nose. She pressed her palm against the glass. "I'm here," she whispered. "Mummy's here." Ellen rested a reassuring hand on Avery's back. "You came just in time. Talking to him helps regulate his patterns." Avery swallowed hard. "Can I see the chart?" Ellen hesitated, then nodded, handing it over. Avery scanned the numbers: oxygen, saturation, heart rate, temperature. She didn't understand everything, but she recognized improvement. Relief washed over her, like warm water. "He scared us," Ellen said gently. "But he's a tough one." Avery blinked back tears. "He shouldn't have to be." She stayed beside him for hours, watching each breath like it was a miracle. She hummed softly, a melody her own mother once sang before life tore their family apart. The room gradually calmed. Nurses dimmed lights. Machines softened their tones. At one point, Ellen approached with a small smile. "You know, most babies who fight like this end up becoming incredible children, strong-willed, brilliant even." Avery brushed a finger along the glass. "I want him to grow up safe, loved, not around people like..." She couldn't finish. She didn't need to. Ellen knew. Later, as dawn crept in through the blinds, a doctor entered. Dr. Patel, calm eyes, steady hands. She reviewed the chart and nodded. "He's stabilizing. Good progress. But, Avery, you need rest too." Rest. A foreign concept. "I'll go home soon," Avery said, though she didn't know how she would leave him. Dr. Patel paused. "One more thing. Someone came by earlier asking about you." Avery stiffened. "Who?" He didn't give a name. Said he knew you. Tall man. Expensive suit." Her stomach twisted. "Derek?" "No. He would never step foot in a public hospital. Not for her. Not for their son he pretended didn't exist." "Did he leave anything?" Avery asked. "Doctor." Patel nodded and handed her a sealed envelope. Avery's pulse quickened. She opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a single note, written in clean, decisive handwriting. "You shouldn't be alone in this. We need to talk." No signature. No indication of who sent it. But there was something else, a business card tucked behind the paper. "Grant Tower. Elias Grant. Founder and CEO." Avery stared at the name, her breath catching. Why would a billionaire know she existed? And why did he care? Before she could piece it together, Nurse Ellen rushed toward her. "Avery, your son's monitors just spiked again. You need to come now." The monitors around Avery's son beeped in frantic warning as she rushed back to the incubator. Nurses gathered quickly, adjusting equipment with practiced urgency. Avery's breath caught as her tiny baby's chest strained with each uneven gasp. She pressed her trembling hand to the glass, whispering desperately, "I'm here, sweetheart. Stay with me. Please stay with me." A respiratory specialist hurried over and recalibrated the oxygen flow. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, her son's breathing smoothed into a fragile rhythm. The tension broke like a snapped wire. Nurse Ellen exhaled first. Then Avery did too, her legs nearly folding beneath her. "He's stabilizing again," the specialist said gently. "He's fighting hard." 9. Avery sank into the chair beside the incubator, tears drying on her cheeks. She didn't know how much more her heart could take. Every moment felt like a test she had never prepared for, but she refused to break. Not now. Not ever. Hours later, when the room finally settled, Avery pulled the envelope from her pocket, the one with Elias Grant's flawless handwriting. The name alone carried weight in New York City. Billionaire, philanthropist, innovator, a man who built empires inside towers that touched the clouds. People like him didn't cross paths with people like her, yet somehow he knew she existed. She reread the note, searching for meaning in the spare words. "You shouldn't be alone in this. We need to talk. Did he know about her son? Did he know about Derek? Did he somehow know she was hanging on by a thread? Her thoughts spiraled until Nurse Ellen touched her shoulder. "You should eat something," she murmured. "I'll watch him," I rehearsed. Avery managed a grateful smile before stepping into the waiting room. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty, lights dimmed, chairs arranged in silent rows. She picked up a stale sandwich and sat near the window, watching snow drift past the glass. It reminded her of the night she was thrown out cold, endless, indifferent. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Avery hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A calm, steady voice responded. "Miss Collins, this is Elias Grant." Answered. The sandwich slipped from her hand. "I'm sorry to contact you in such a difficult moment," he continued. "But I believe our paths crossed once before, though you may not remember it." Avery swallowed. I don't understand. 8 years ago, my daughter wandered off outside a cafe. You found her and brought her inside before she reached the street. I never forgot your face." Avery froze. A faint memory flickered holding a small girl's hand, soothing her until a frantic father arrived. "My assistant recognized you from the photos Jordan sent of your repair work," Elias said. "When I realized who you were, I wanted to reach out. But why now?" She whispered. "Because I've watched people break under far less than what you're enduring. And you haven't. That kind of resilience is rare." Her throat tightened. No one had ever spoken about her strength before, not even Derek. "Miss Collins," Elias said gently, "I'd like to help you. Not out of charity, out of respect." Ivercent. Avery pressed a hand to her chest. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything yet. When you're ready, come to Grant Tower again." Before she could respond, he hung up. She sat still for a long moment, breath uneven, heart racing. Elias Grant remembered her. He wanted to help her. He believed in her. Hope flickered, soft but bright. But as she returned to the NICU, she sensed tension in the air again. Nurse Ellen rushed to meet her, eyes wide. "Avery, there's someone here asking to see your son." A man. Avery's blood ran cold. And when she stepped inside, Derek Mercer was standing at the incubator. Avery froze just inside the NICU doorway. Derek Mercer stood beside the incubator, his hands casually tucked into the pockets of his tailored coat, as if he were inspecting merchandise instead of looking at the child he had denied existed. His presence cut through the sterile air like a blade. He glanced over his shoulder with a practiced smile. "Avery." Her pulse pounded in her ears. "What are you doing here?" "Visiting my son," he said lightly. She stiffened. "Your son? You threw us out into a snowstorm. You forged test results to say he wasn't yours. You don't get to walk in here and pretend you care." A muscle twitched in Derek's jaw. "I may have acted rashly." Sabrina was misinformed. People make mistakes. Avery let out a humorless laugh. "A mistake? You nearly killed us." Derek stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, Avery, my PR team got wind of the situation. If anyone finds out I kicked out a pregnant woman and the baby survived, well, it looks bad. Investors panic. Stock drops. You understand." Avery took a slow breath, the room tilting slightly. He wasn't here because he cared. He was here because he needed damage control. "So what?" she asked. "You expect me to help you fix your image." "I expect you to let me be the father," Derek replied. "Publicly, anyway. It benefits both of us. You'll have money, stability, a future for the kid." "The kid?" "Not our son. Not my child. Just merchandise for his reputation." Nurse Ellen stood nearby, jaw tight. "Sir," she murmured, "this is a neonatal unit. If you're upsetting the mother—" "I'm having a private conversation," Derek snapped. "Stay out of it." Avery stepped forward. shielding the incubator with her body. "You need to leave." He crossed his arms. "No, not until we discuss custody." Her stomach twisted. "Custody? You didn't want him. You don't even know his name." Derek hesitated. For a brief second, his confidence cracked. "What? What is his name again?" he asked. That was the breaking point. Avery's voice went cold enough to frost glass. "His name is Liam, and you will never come near him again." "Ah." Derek took a slow breath, regaining his composure. "You don't have the financial means to fight me. My lawyers will bury you." Avery felt her knees weaken. He wasn't wrong. But then she remembered Adrian Hale and Elias Grant and the card in her pocket. She wasn't alone anymore. Not completely. "You're not getting custody," she said without wavering. "Not now. Not ever." Derek studied her for a moment, eyes narrowing. "Interesting. You've grown a spine. And one. And..." He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a venomous whisper. "But understand something, Avery. If I decide this child benefits my public image, I will take him from you. Courts love stable fathers. You're one eviction away from the street." Avery's breath hitched. Fear curled around her ribs, tightening. Derek smirked. "We'll talk soon." He turned and strode out of the NICU, leaving the door swinging behind him. When he disappeared down the hall, Avery sagged against the wall, tears burning her eyes. Nurse Ellen touched her shoulder gently. "Are you all right?" "No," Avery whispered. "But I will be." She looked at Liam, tiny and fragile beneath the warm lights. She couldn't lose him. She wouldn't. Her phone buzzed. A message from a number she recognized now. "When you're ready, come see me. I can help you protect him. E.G." Avery stared at the initials, breath catching. But before she could respond, a shadow fell across the NICU door. The head nurse rushed in. "Avery, you have another visitor, and this one says he's here on behalf of Grant Tower." Avery's heart stopped, because the man walking toward her wasn't Elias Grant, but someone who knew a secret she wasn't ready to face. Avery felt her pulse racing as the NICU doors slid open again. She expected Elias Grant, the billionaire, whose initials were still glowing on her phone screen, the man who had offered help she didn't yet understand. Instead, the person walking in was someone she had never seen before. He was tall, sharply dressed in a charcoal overcoat dusted with snow, his expression serious but not unkind. He carried a leather portfolio under one arm, and his steps were calm, deliberate, like someone used to delivering news that changed people's lives. "Miss Collins?" he asked softly. Avery swallowed. "Yes. Who are you?" He extended a business card. "Daniel Reese, Senior Counsel for Grant Tower." Counsel! Her heart hit her ribs. Was this some legal issue? Had she done something wrong by meeting with Adrian Hale? Was Elias reconsidering everything? Daniel seemed to read her panic. "Don't worry. I'm not here about anything negative." His voice lowered, respectful of the fragile lives in the NICU around them. "Mr. Grant asked me to speak with you personally." Avery blinked. "About what?" He glanced at Liam's incubator, his expression softening. "About ensuring your son's safety and your own." Her knees nearly buckled. I don't understand." Daniel motioned toward a quiet corner, and they stepped aside while nurses tended to the monitors. He opened the portfolio, revealing neatly arranged documents, sealed envelopes, and what looked like reports. "Mr. Grant became aware of your situation," Daniel said, "and of Derek Mercer's recent behavior." Avery's breath caught. How would he? Derek's attempt to file a preliminary custody inquiry triggered several red flags. Mr. Grant's team monitors certain legal filings for risk management purposes. His name crossed their systems. That made Avery's stomach twist. Derek was already moving to take Liam. Daniel continued. "Mr. Grant believes you need protection, proper legal representation, assistance navigating housing, employment stability, resources to fight anyone attempting to harm you or your child." Ross. Her eyes stung. No one had ever fought for her before, not like this. Why would he help me? Avery whispered. I'm no one. Why? Daniel actually smiled. Mr. Grant disagrees. He remembers the day you found his daughter outside that cafe. He's mentioned it several times over the years. Says he never forgot your face. And now, seeing everything you're enduring, he believes you deserve support, not pity. Avery felt tears spill down her cheeks. Gratitude and confusion tangled inside her. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything today, Daniel assured her. All we ask is that you look through these documents. There are options to secure guardianship, restrain interference, and stabilize your living situation. If you choose to move forward, Grant Tower will cover the costs. Avery stared at the portfolio, feeling the weight of possibility settle into her palms. A week ago, she had been thrown onto a cold street, pregnant and alone. Now a powerful corporate counsel was standing in a NICU offering her a lifeline she didn't dare imagine. I'll look everything over, she whispered. Thank you, Daniel nodded. Take your time. I'll return tomorrow. He turned to leave, but paused at the doorway, his expression darkening just slightly. One more thing, he said quietly. Mr. Grant also asked me to warn you. Derek Mercer is not acting alone. Someone has been feeding him information about your whereabouts. And Avery's heart stopped cold. Someone close, Daniel added. Someone who knows you. She felt dizzy. Who? I don't have anyone. Daniel's voice dropped. You do. And they've already contacted Derek. Avery shook her head, confused, frightened. But who? Who would betray me like that? Daniel hesitated, as if unsure whether to speak. Then he said the words that made Avery's blood turn to ice. Miss Collins. The one leaking information to Derek is someone who was around the night he threw you out. Avery stared at him, breath frozen. Someone who saw everything. Someone you trusted. The words echoed in Avery's head long after Daniel Reese left the NICU. Someone who was around the night he threw you out. Someone who saw everything. Someone you trusted. She replayed the night of the storm again and again, the memory slicing through her chest. Derek yelling, Sabrina smirking, snow rushing in through the open penthouse door, and then Mrs. Davenport, the elderly neighbor who witnessed everything, who offered to help, who recorded the footage, who promised she would keep it safe. But why? Why would she betray Avery? Why would she talk to Derek now? Avery forced the thought away. Mrs. Davenport had been kind, warm, and protective. She wouldn't do this. She couldn't. Avery barely knew anyone else. She had no friends left from Derek's world. They had all sided with him, and the people in her building were practically strangers. Then who? Her chest tightened. Across the NICU, Liam slept in a peaceful rhythm, unaware of the storm gathering around him. His fragile breaths rose and fell beneath the soft blue lights. She moved closer, placing a gentle hand on the incubator. I'll keep you safe, she whispered. I don't care who I have to fight. End quote. But the fear crept in anyway, quiet and venomous. Someone was watching her movements closely enough to contact Derek. Someone wanted Avery to lose. Hours passed. Nurses shifted. Machines hummed. Avery couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on her, even in the sterile room. When visiting hours ended, she walked home through the bitter cold, replaying every detail of the past week. The bus ride, the NICU, the stranger who helped her, the landlord, Jordan, the text from an unknown number, the sudden invitation to Grant Tower. Was it possible someone had been tracking her since the beginning? Her apartment felt smaller than usual when she entered, shadows stretching across the peeling walls. She checked the lock twice, then pulled the blinds shut. Her breath trembled as she sat on the edge of the mattress. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. I heard you met Hale today. You really think a man like that cares about you? Avery's blood froze. She typed back with shaking fingers. "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "Someone who knows you're making a mistake. Someone who remembers where you came from." Avery deleted the chain of messages, heart pounding. She didn't know whether to be terrified or furious. A sudden knock made her flinch. She backed up against the wall. "Who is it?" "It's Jordan," came the muffled voice. "I brought you something." She opened the door cautiously. He stood there holding a small container of homemade chicken soup. "You looked exhausted today," he said. "I just wanted to help." Her suspicion cracked a little. Jordan wasn't polished enough, clever enough, or cruel enough to play games with Derek. She accepted the soup with a grateful nod. "Thank you," she whispered. "No problem." "Hey, everything okay?" Avery hesitated. She didn't know who she could trust. She didn't know where the danger was coming from. The only person she felt safe telling was Liam, and he was too small to understand. "I'm fine," she lied. After Jordan left, she set the soup aside and curled onto the mattress. Exhaustion tugged her under, and eventually she fell asleep. But in the darkest hour of the night, her door creaked open. Avery snapped awake, heart slamming only to see a familiar figure standing in the doorway. Mrs. Davenport. Her coat still dusted with snow, her expression unreadable. "Avery," she whispered, stepping inside without waiting for permission. Avery sat up, muscles coiling. What are you doing here?" Mrs. Davenport clasped her hands together, trembling. "I need to tell you the truth before it's too late." Avery swallowed, fear rising. "What truth?" The old woman's eyes filled with guilt. "It's about Derek, and about the night he threw you out." She took a shaking breath. "Avery, you were never supposed to survive that night. Were not." For a moment, Avery forgot how to breathe. The tiny apartment felt even smaller, its thin walls closing around her as Mrs. Davenport stepped deeper into the room. The older woman's hands trembled violently, her eyes glistening under the flickering ceiling light. What do you mean I wasn't supposed to survive?" Avery whispered, barely able to speak. Mrs. Davenport lowered herself onto the rickety chair beside the mattress. "Sit," she urged softly. "Please." "Oh." Avery hesitated, but obeyed, muscles tight with fear. Mrs. Davenport's voice cracked when she spoke again. "I should have come sooner. But I was scared, and I didn't know who to trust. But after that lawyer from Grant Tower showed up, after Derek resurfaced, I realized silence is no longer an option." Avery's skin prickled. "Tell me everything." The old woman closed her eyes, gathering strength. "The night Derek threw you out," I heard shouting. "I came to the hallway, saw him pushing your things into the snow, saw how pale you were. You could barely stand." She swallowed hard. "But what I didn't understand until later was why Sabrina kept watching you go down the stairs with that look." Avery remembered that moment all too well. The shove, the flash of fear, her hand reaching for the railing. Mrs. Davenport continued. "After you left, Derek got a phone call. He didn't know my door was cracked open. I heard him say, 'It's done. She won't make it far.' And then he laughed." Avery felt the world tilt violently. "No," she breathed. "No, he wouldn't." "He would," Mrs. Davenport said firmly. "And he did. He wanted you out of the picture. Completely." A cold ripple ran through Avery's entire body. It wasn't just cruelty. It wasn't just abandonment. It was intent. "Why are you telling me this now?" Avery whispered. Mrs. Davenport's hands twisted in her lap. "Because I've been keeping something. Something Derek must never know I still have." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a USB drive. "My door camera. It caught everything. Him shoving you, Sabrina pushing you, Derek telling her to stop pretending she cares whether you fall." Avery pressed a hand over her mouth, horrified. "And it caught something else," Mrs. Davenport said, voice thinning. Someone following you as you walked into the storm. A chill crawled up Avery's spine. Who? I couldn't tell. A man in a dark coat, hood up, but he waited until you got to the bus stop before disappearing. Avery's pulse hammered. Why didn't you show this sooner? Mrs. Davenport bowed her head. Because Derek found out I had the footage. He threatened to have me evicted, or worse. I erased the copy he knew about, but I kept another one. Hidden. Avery stared at the USB as if it were a grenade. This can destroy him, she whispered. Yes, Mrs. Davenport said, but it can also put a target on your back. Derek won't let you expose him. Not now. Not with his career falling apart. Fear clawed at Avery's lungs. Everything suddenly made sense, the mysterious texts. Derek's sudden reappearance, the man Daniel warned her about. Someone had been feeding Derek information, someone who had access to her movements. Mrs. Davenport, Avery asked, voice shaking. Was it you? Were you the one talking to him? The old woman recoiled, tears welling. No, child. I would never betray you. I've been protecting you in the only ways I could. Avery felt her shoulders soften, but only slightly. Nothing felt safe anymore. Then Mrs. Davenport leaned closer, gripping Avery's hand with sudden urgency. You must give this to someone powerful enough to shield you, she whispered. Someone Derek fears. It's... Avery's mind flashed immediately to one name, Elias Grant. But before she could speak, there was a loud crash from the hallway. Both women jumped. Footsteps, heavy, rushed, purposeful. Mrs. Davenport's eyes widened in terror. Avery. He found us. The door handle began to turn, and the voice outside said, very softly, Avery, open up. We need to talk. The voice on the other side of the door was low, calm, too familiar. Derek. Avery's lungs seized. Mrs. Davenport's fingers dug into her arm as the door handle jiggled again. Harder this time. Avery, Derek said, his tone eerily composed. We need to have a conversation. Open the door. Mrs. Davenport shook her head violently. Don't let him in. He's not alone. I heard 2 sets of footsteps. Avery's heart slammed against her ribs. She scanned her small apartment for anything that could serve as protection. But it was just thin walls, peeling paint, and a single cheap lamp. Nothing between her and the man who'd tried to erase her. Stay quiet, Mrs. Davenport whispered. He might think you're not here. But the door rattled again. Avery, Derek continued, I know the old woman is with you, and I know she told you things that aren't true. Mrs. Davenport's breath hitched. Avery squeezed her hand. You can't hide behind her, Derek called out. She's confused. She's been feeding you lies. Avery swallowed hard. Go away, Derek. Silence. A long, chilling silence. Then, a different voice spoke. Softer, colder, surgical. Avery. It's Sabrina. Please open the door. You're scaring us. Mrs. Davenport paled. She's worse than he is. Avery's stomach twisted. Sabrina, who had smiled while pushing her pregnant body toward a staircase. Sabrina, who did Derek's dirty work with perfect lipstick and steady hands. Avery, Sabrina said sweetly, we only want to talk. You have information that belongs to us. Us, not Derek. Not her. A united threat. Avery shook her head. You're not getting anything from me. Another silence. Then Derek's voice hardened. Open this door, or we will. Mrs. Davenport clutched Avery's sleeve. We need to call the police. Avery grabbed her phone, but the screen was black. Dead. She hadn't charged it since the hospital. A fist slammed into the door. Avery gasped. We don't have time, Mrs. Davenport whispered. Give the drive to someone who can protect it. Someone powerful. Someone you trust. Avery whispered back. I only trust one person now. She grabbed her coat and clutched the USB in her fist. The fire escape. They could use the fire escape. She motioned to Mrs. Davenport to follow. But the older woman stayed frozen. "I'll slow them down," she said. "No, you can't. You have a son to protect. Go." Another blow splintered the wood. Sabrina's laughter seeped through the crack. "Avery, darling, running never works for people like you." Oat. Avery felt something inside her snap into clarity. No more running. No more fear. But she had to survive tonight. Liam had to survive. And the only person who could shield them was waiting at Grant Tower. She grabbed Mrs. Davenport's hands, squeezed them with fierce gratitude, then slipped out the window into the icy night. The metal rungs of the fire escape bit into her palms as she climbed down into the alley below. Snowflakes whipped around her, stinging her cheeks. Her breath came out in frantic clouds. She ran toward the main street, half slipping on ice, her boots barely gripping the ground. Behind her, the apartment door finally gave way with a violent crash. Sabrina's voice echoed down the stairwell, sharp and triumphant. "She's running. Derek, get the car." Avery darted into traffic, almost hit by a taxi. She stumbled onto the opposite sidewalk, lungs burning, mind racing. She had to reach Elias Grant. She had to get to someone who could make Derek afraid for once. She pulled her coat closer and sprinted toward the nearest subway entrance. But as she reached the stairs, a black SUV screeched around the corner. A window rolled down. Sabrina leaned out, her eyes gleaming. "Avery, sweetheart, did you really think you could outrun us?" Avery's lungs burned as she sprinted toward the subway entrance, every step fueled by pure survival. Behind her, the black SUV skidded dangerously close to the curb. Sabrina shouted something unintelligible, a mix of rage and triumph, before the vehicle lurched forward again. Avery dashed down the icy steps into the station. The stale underground air wrapped around her like a lifeline. She shoved past startled commuters, gripping the USB drive so tightly her knuckles ached. She leapt onto the first train just as the doors chimed. They slid shut with a metallic thud, cutting off Sabrina's furious face as she reached the platform a second too late. Avery collapsed into a seat, shaking from adrenaline and cold. The train screeched forward, lights flickering across her panicked reflection in the window. She could still hear Sabrina's taunts, still feel Derek's looming threat, still sense the danger tightening around her. She pulled the USB from her pocket and stared at it. This tiny device. This was what Derek feared, what Sabrina wanted, what Mrs. Davenport had risked everything to protect, and what could destroy her life just as easily as it could save it. When the train reached Midtown, Avery forced herself to stand. She climbed the steps into the frigid air of Manhattan, the towers rising above her like guardians or judges. Grant Tower shimmered in the distance, lit with warm gold. A promise, a threat, a chance. She walked as fast as she could, slipping twice on patches of ice. People rushed past her in designer coats, oblivious to the battle unfolding in the shadows of their city. By the time she reached the lobby of Grant Tower, her hands were numb and her breath came in painful bursts. The security guard recognized her. "Miss Collins? Mr. Grant told us you might come. Take the private elevator." She didn't have time to question how Elias already knew something was wrong. The elevator doors closed, whisking her upward through the warm glow of the tower. She clutched the USB like a lifeline. Her heart raced. Her baby was in danger. She was in danger. Everything depended on what happened next. The doors opened onto the executive floor, and Adrian Hale himself was waiting. He hurried toward her. "Avery, what happened? You look like you ran through a blizzard." "I did," she breathed. "Derek and Sabrina, they're after me. And this." She held up the USB. "Mrs. Davenport said, it's proof. Proof of everything they did." Adrian's eyes sharpened. "Come into the conference room. Elias is on his way." Inside, Adrian closed the blinds and locked the door. Avery placed the USB on the table, her hands trembling. Adrian slid it into his laptop and opened the first file. The video loaded. Avery's breath stopped completely. There she was, 8 months younger, shaking, pleading, her hand clutching the railing as Sabrina shoved her again. Derek's voice filled the speakers, cold enough to freeze blood. Let her go. She won't make it far. 22. Avery covered her mouth. Adrian's jaw tightened in fury. This, he said slowly, is attempted homicide. Avery felt dizzy. Mrs. Davenport said there was more. There is, Adrian said grimly. Look, another file opened. A blurry figure following Avery into the storm. Hood up, shadowed face. Adrian leaned closer. Whoever this is, he wasn't protecting you. He was tracking you. Why? Avery whispered. We'll find out, Adrian promised. And Elias will know what to do. Footsteps echoed outside the conference room. Avery turned just as the door swung open. Elias Grant entered, eyes sharp, coat dusted with snow. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood someone Avery never expected to see again. Someone whose presence meant nothing would ever be the same. The room fell silent when Elias Grant stepped inside, snow dusting his shoulders like he'd walked through a different world just to reach hers. Avery's breath caught, but it froze entirely when she saw the man standing half a step behind him. Daniel Reese. Not the same Daniel who had come to the NICU. This Daniel looked different, harder around the edges, lips pressed into a severe line. He gave her a curt nod before stepping aside, allowing Elias to approach. Avery, Elias said quietly. Adrian told me everything. Her throat tightened. She didn't know where to begin, Derek. Sabrina, the chase, the confession from Mrs. Davenport, the footage that now sat on Adrian's laptop like a ticking bomb. Elias walked toward the table, eyes fixed on the paused image of Derek pushing her into the snow. Fury rippled across his face, sharp and controlled. This, he said, voice low, is monstrous. And it will not go unpunished. Avery felt her breath loosen just slightly. Elias wasn't merely sympathetic, he was enraged on her behalf, protective in a way she had never experienced. But the moment shattered when Daniel spoke. Mr. Grant, he said, we have to move quickly. Derek and Sabrina are headed to the plaza tonight. They're guests at the Mercer and Hale Investment Summit. Avery's heart twisted. Why does that matter? Daniel exchanged a look with Elias before answering. Because Derek plans to present a custody motion tomorrow. He's going to claim you're unstable, unfit, and financially incapable. Tonight is his last chance to reshape his public image. Avery pressed a hand over her mouth. Derek was always strategic, cold, calculated. The gala wasn't just a party. It was a stage, and he'd chosen it to rewrite the narrative. Elias turned to her. You have 2 choices. Hide, and hope this doesn't destroy you, or stop him before he gets the chance. Avery's pulse fluttered. Stop him? How? I'm no one. Elias stepped closer, his voice steady. You're not no one. You are the woman he tried and failed to break. You have the footage. You have the truth. Tonight, you have us. Adrian nodded. If you walk into that gala, Derek will panic. Sabrina will crack. One misstep in front of those investors, those cameras, and their story collapses before it begins. For the first time in her life, Avery felt a flicker of power. It was terrifying and thrilling. Elias, she whispered, I don't belong in a place like the plaza. He gave her a quiet smile. You belonged there long before Derek ever did. Her eyes stung. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not with admiration, not with certainty. Then Elias extended his hand. Come with us. Let's end this. Avery stared at his outstretched palm, heart pounding wildly. She wasn't brave like Elias. She wasn't polished like the people who walked red carpets and toasted to billion-dollar deals. She was a broken woman from a peeling apartment, with a premature baby fighting for every breath. But she was also a mother, and mothers did not run. She placed her hand in his. They left Grant Tower and stepped into a waiting Mercedes S-Class, its headlights slicing through the Manhattan night. Snow drifted past the windows as the car glided toward Fifth Avenue, where the Plaza Hotel glowed like a palace carved from gold. Inside the ballroom, Derek and Sabrina were already working, the crowd laughing, sparkling, weaving lies into the air like perfume. Avery inhaled sharply. Elias squeezed her hand. "You're not alone." The car slowed. The doors opened. Cameras flashed in the distance, and as Avery stepped out onto the glittering entrance of the plaza, the crowd parted, because Derek Mercer had just seen her, and his expression twisted into something between horror and rage. The Plaza Hotel shimmered like a jeweled crown against the Manhattan night, its golden light spilling across Fifth Avenue as limousines lined the entrance. Avery Collins stepped out of the Mercedes, her breath catching as the cold air brushed against her bare shoulders. The black evening gown Elias had arranged for her fit like armor, simple, elegant, unapologetically strong, a far cry from the frayed sweaters she had worn just days before. Elias exited beside her, offering a steadying hand. "Remember," he murmured, "you're not here to impress anyone. You're here to be seen." Avery inhaled sharply. "What if they see the wrong thing?" Elias met her eyes. "Then we'll show them the truth." Inside, the ballroom pulsed with luxury. Crystal chandeliers dripped light over marble floors. Waiters in white gloves carried trays of champagne. Executives, investors, and CEOs murmured in tight circles. Avery felt the weight of their gazes as she walked in a mixture of curiosity, confusion, and whispers she couldn't decipher. But one face froze completely. Derek Mercer. He stood near the stage in a tailored midnight blue suit, Sabrina on his arm. Their smiles evaporated the moment they saw her. Sabrina's fingers tightened around her clutch. Derek's jaw locked, a small twitch revealing panic beneath his polished exterior. Avery straightened her shoulders. Adrian Hale moved beside her, carrying a sleek black folder, the one containing the footage. He gave her a reassuring nod as they entered the center of the room. Conversation quieted. Avery felt every eye shift toward them. Toward her, Sabrina stepped forward, voice dripping poison. "Avery, dear. We didn't realize they were letting charity cases in tonight." Murmurs rippled. Avery felt heat rise in her neck, but Elias stepped between them with controlled grace. "Miss Collins is here as my guest," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly. "And as our newest design consultant." The room reacted instantly. Shock, whispers, interest. Derek's expression flickered. "Consultant? Her." He forced a laugh. "What exactly is she designing? Soup kitchens?" Adrian opened the folder. "Interesting you should ask that, Derek. Because Avery has something she'd like to show you." Sabrina's eyes darted nervously. "Don't play games." Adrian ignored her and signaled the AV technician. Lights dimmed slightly as a screen on the far wall activated. The first frame appeared. Snow, the penthouse hallway, and a younger Avery, pale and trembling, clutching her swollen belly. Gasps cut through the ballroom. Avery watched Derek's face drain of color as the footage played him, grabbing her arm, Sabrina shoving her, his voice saying, "Let her go. She won't get far." Silence. Heavy. Loaded. Then, the next frame, a shadowed man following her into the storm. Derek stepped back, stunned. "Turn it off. This is nonsense. This is taken out of context." Elias's voice sliced through the panic. "Attempted harm isn't a matter of context," Sabrina snapped. "She edited that. She's setting us up." But no one believed her. Not tonight. Avery felt her knees weaken, but Adrian steadied her gently. "This is only a portion of what we have," he said. "There's more. Enough to end your career, Derek." Cameras turned. Investors whispered. Reputations shifted. Derek opened his mouth to argue, but Elias stepped forward. eyes like steel. Derek Mercer, after tonight, neither you nor your company will recover from this. Avery exhaled slowly, the first breath in years that didn't hurt. But before she could take another, a sudden commotion rippled near the entrance. Security rushed toward the doors. A staff member burst into the ballroom, out of breath. "Mr. Grant, there's an emergency call from the hospital," he gasped. "It's about Miss Collins's son. You need to hear this immediately." Avery's vision blurred. Elias caught her arm as her world tilted. "What happened?" she whispered. The staff member swallowed hard. "It's your son, Miss Collins. He's gone missing." The ballroom erupted into chaos. The moment the staff member uttered the words "gone missing," champagne glasses clinked to the floor. Conversations broke like shattered mirrors. Avery felt the world tilt beneath her feet, the golden glow of the plaza dissolving into a blur of panic. "My son, what do you mean missing?" Avery gasped, her voice cracking into a frantic whisper. The staff member stepped closer, breathless. The NICU nurse stepped out for less than a minute. When she came back, the incubator was empty. Security footage shows someone in hospital scrubs taking him. Avery's legs buckled. Elias caught her just before she collapsed. "We need to go," he said firmly. Now, Adrian Hale was already dialing someone on his phone. "I'm contacting the precinct captain. They'll shut down the bridges. No one gets out of Manhattan with that baby." Sabrina, still standing near the stage, smirked faintly. "Looks like someone wasn't paying attention." Avery spun toward her, trembling with rage. "Where is my son?" Sabrina shrugged. "If I wanted to take him, sweetheart, you wouldn't have heard a thing." Elias stepped between them, fury etched into every line of his face. "Say another word and you'll regret it." To dime. Derek, on the other hand, looked stunned, genuinely stunned. "Someone took the kid." He muttered it, like he hadn't considered such a possibility. But then something flickered in his eyes, calculation. Elias tightened his grip on Avery. "We're leaving. Now." They pushed through the crowd, security clearing the path. Cameras flashed, capturing every desperate step Avery took. Outside, black SUVs and police escorts idled by the curb, but as Avery stepped out into the icy night, something strange happened. Gasps rippled along the entrance. Guests pointed, murmured, "Is that her? Oh my God, it can't be. Is that her?" Avery turned, breath fogging in the cold, and froze. Projected onto the giant LED billboard across from the plaza was an image, a grainy frame from the hospital security monitor, a woman in teal scrubs carrying a bundled infant through a stairwell. The figure was blurry, but unmistakable. The posture, the hair, the walk. People whispered louder, "That looks like Avery Collins. Why would she take her own baby? Is she unstable?" Avery's heart slammed painfully against her ribs. No, that's not me. That's not me." Elias stepped forward, voice like iron. "This footage is manipulated. Someone is framing her." But Avery barely heard him. Her eyes stayed glued to the screen as the image zoomed in, enhanced, sharpened, morphing into clarity. It wasn't perfect. Whoever altered the footage was rushing, but the resemblance was enough to ignite a scandal in seconds. Her face, her outline, her baby in someone else's arms. Adrian swore under his breath. "Derek, Sabrina, they're using the media. They're setting you up as the abductor." Avery felt tears burn hot down her cheeks. "Why would they do this? Why?" Elias spoke quietly, dead serious. "Because if you're the kidnapper, you lose custody forever, and Derek gets exactly what he wants." She shook her head violently. "We have to go to the hospital, we have to." "We will," Elias said, guiding her into the SUV. "We'll clear your name. We'll find your son." But as the car doors closed and engines roared to life, a police cruiser screeched around the corner, lights flashing red and blue. Officers jumped out. "Which one of you is Avery Collins?" one shouted. Avery's breath vanished. I am," she whispered. The officer's hand went to his cuffs. "Ma'am, you need to come with us for questioning regarding the abduction of your child." Elias lunged forward. She didn't take him. "Sir, step back." Avery stared in horror as the officers approached, because the world now believed she had kidnapped her own baby. And worst of all, someone in the crowd lifted their phone, revealing a live stream. Derek and Sabrina, smiling into the camera. Sabrina whispered, "Told you she'd crack. Hazard tenders." The police light splashed red and blue across Avery's face, turning her tears into streaks of shimmering color as she stood frozen outside the plaza. The crowd formed a widening ring around her, grasping for their phones, soaking in the unfolding spectacle. Whispers sharpened into accusations. "That's the woman who took her own baby. She looks unstable. She ran from the hospital." Avery shook her head helplessly. No, I didn't. I would never hurt my son." "Hey, Sev." "Old live?" But the officers were closing in. "Miss Collins," one said, "please turn around and place your hands where we can see them." Elias stepped forward, anger tightening every muscle in his body. "You have no evidence. This is a setup." "Sir, step back," the officer repeated. "We have security footage and a missing infant. We're taking her in for questioning." Avery's legs trembled. She looked at Elias, panic blurring her vision. Please don't let them take me. Liam needs me. I didn't do this." "I know," Elias said softly, voice lowering to steady her. "I know you didn't, and I won't let this stand." But even he couldn't stop what happened next. Cold metal cuffs clicked around Avery's wrists. The crowd gasped. Someone cheered, and through the flashing lights, Avery saw Derek standing near the entrance, coat draped elegantly over his shoulders as he pretended to look concerned for the cameras. Sabrina hovered beside him with perfected sympathy. "It's tragic," Sabrina said to a reporter. "We tried to help her. She just snapped." Avery lunged forward, fury exploding inside her, but the officers held her back. "She's lying," Avery screamed. "They're framing me. They took my baby." Click. Cameras captured her desperation, freezing it into a damning tableau. Elias pushed through the officers, eyes burning. "You're making a mistake. I'll have 10 lawyers here in 10 minutes. Adrian Hale will release evidence." One officer interrupted, lowering his voice. "Mr. Grant, with respect, your involvement is already raising questions. People think you're covering for her." Elias stiffened. "Covering for her? She's the victim." But the public had already chosen sides, and Avery saw it in their eyes: fear, judgment, suspicion. The same cold dismissal she had seen in Derek's eyes the night he threw her into the snow. They shoved her gently into the back of the cruiser. Avery stared out the window, heartbeat shattering, watching the gilded entrance of the plaza fade into the night. Elias remained outside, hands clenched, helpless fury radiating from him. Adrian stood beside him, jaw tight, already dialing contacts with military precision. Then the cruiser pulled away. Inside, Avery's grief folded in on itself, sharp enough to cut. But beneath it, something else glowed, a rising heat, a fierce resolve she had never felt before. She was done being the victim. She was done letting Derek and Sabrina write the story. At the precinct, they led her into a small interrogation room with grey walls and a buzzing light. The officer sat across from her, flipping open a file. "Miss Collins, we need to go over your movements tonight." Avery leaned forward. "My baby was kidnapped. Start with that." Before he could answer, another officer rushed into the doorway, pale-faced. "Sir, you need to see this. It's about the footage." The first officer stood. "What now?" The second officer swallowed hard. "The woman in the video, the one carrying the infant." Avery's heart stopped. "It wasn't Avery Collins," he said. "We enhanced the image. It's someone else, entirely." A beat of stunned silence filled the room. Then he added, and you're not going to believe who it is." Avery felt her pulse hammering in her throat as the officers exchanged grave looks. The interrogation room, already cold, seemed to shrink around her. Her hands trembled slightly against the table, no longer cuffed but still shaking from the weight of everything she'd endured. "Who was it?" she whispered. "Who took my son?" The second officer set down a still image, clipped from the enhanced hospital footage. The woman's face, once blurred, now emerged in chilling clarity. A nurse's cap, scrubs, a determined stride. Avery's heart froze. It wasn't her. It wasn't Sabrina. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone Avery never expected. "Melissa Carter," the officer said. "Night nurse. She's been working in the NICU for years." Avery blinked, stunned. "But why?" "She always seemed gentle. She helped me. She held my hand when Liam's breathing dropped." "Why would she do this?" The officers exchanged another uneasy glance. "That's what we're trying to figure out," the first officer said. "But Melissa clocked out early tonight. She's gone. No forwarding address. No car registered. We believe this was planned." A cold dread seeped into Avery's bones. Planned. Targeted. Not random. She leaned forward. "Does this have anything to do with Derek? Is she working for him?" The officer hesitated. "We don't know yet." Avery slammed her palm onto the table. "You do know something. Tell me." The second officer exhaled slowly, then pushed another piece of paper toward her, this time a background report. Melissa Carter wasn't just a nurse. She was Sabrina Cole's cousin. Avery's breath tore from her lungs. No, that can't be true." But the evidence stared back like a knife, glinting under harsh light. The first officer spoke quietly. "It appears Melissa was financially connected to Sabrina. Multiple wire transfers over the past year, all unexplained." Avery's stomach twisted. Sabrina. Who had shoved her. Sabrina, who had laughed while Avery begged for safety. Sabrina, who would do anything to protect Derek's image and her own position beside him. "And this part," the officer added, voice tight, "might be the most concerning." He turned another page. Hospital logs, access codes, timestamps. Melissa hadn't acted alone. Someone inside the hospital system had disabled the NICU door alarm for exactly 1 minute and 52 seconds, the exact window Melissa used to take the baby. Avery felt the world tilt dangerously. Who disabled it? Who helped her? "We're working on that," the officer replied. But the tech team found something else in the system, a message stored in Melissa's access logs. He slid it toward Avery. A single sentence typed into the hospital's internal notes, a place it didn't belong. "It ends tonight." A shiver raced through Avery. What ended tonight? Her custody? Her freedom? Her life as a mother? Or something far worse? The officer stepped back, giving her space to breathe. "Miss Collins, we need you to stay calm. A citywide Amber Alert has been issued. All bridges and tunnels are monitored. We'll find your son." But Avery wasn't listening anymore. She was already standing, already walking toward the door. "Miss Collins," the officer warned, "you can't leave. We still need your statement." "No," Avery said, gripping the doorframe, eyes blazing with newfound fire. "You don't understand. I know Melissa. I know Sabrina. I know the way they think. They're not taking Liam out of the city. That would be too obvious." "Then what?" the officer asked. Avery turned slowly, her voice steady, chilling. "They're taking him somewhere Derek can reach him first." The officers exchanged startled looks. Avery clenched her fists. "And I know exactly where that is." Before they could stop her, she bolted into the hallway, down the corridor, toward the exit. The night outside roared with sirens and cold wind. Avery had just stepped onto the sidewalk when a black sedan pulled up sharply beside her. The rear door opened. Inside sat a familiar face, one who should have been nowhere near her at this moment. Elias Grant, but his expression wasn't calm this time. It was haunted. "Avery," he said, voice low and urgent. "Get in." "You're right. I know where they took him." Avery's heart nearly stopped. "Where?" she breathed. Elias met her eyes. "Derek's private safe house. And you're not going to like who's already there." The sedan sliced through the icy Manhattan night, its engine humming low as Avery sat rigid in the back seat beside Elias Grant. Snow drifted across the windshield in frantic spirals, mirroring the storm twisting inside her chest. "A safe house?" Avery whispered. "Derek has a safe house?" Elias nodded grimly. "A private brownstone in Harlem, off the books. He used it years ago during a corporate scandal. No cameras, no public record. Only a handful of people know about it." Avery's pulse hammered. "Then how do you know?" Elias hesitated. "Because Adrian helped investigate that scandal." He recognized the pattern. Avery swallowed, a small spark of fear igniting. "But you said someone else is already there. Who?" Elias didn't answer immediately. His jaw worked, tension rippling across his features. "Elias," she pressed, voice tightening. "Who is there?" He exhaled slowly. "Daniel Reese." Avery blinked. "Daniel? Your counsel?" "He's helping them?" Elias shook his head. "Not the Daniel who came to the NICU. You met his replacement." "Replacement?" Avery whispered, pulse stuttering. "Daniel Reese went missing 3 days ago." The world seemed to tilt. "The man who visited you at the hospital," Elias continued, "was not Daniel Reese. He was an imposter using Daniel's identity. We believe Derek helped orchestrate it." Avery pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "So the man who warned me was feeding information to Derek the entire time." Elias nodded. "He was playing both sides, gaining your trust, tracking your movements." A cold wave of revulsion washed through her. "And now," Elias said, voice low, "he's at the safe house. Which means Liam is in even more danger." The sedan turned sharply. Streets blurred, buildings melting into streaks of white and gold. Every second felt like oxygen draining from Avery's lungs. "Why would Derek want Liam?" she whispered. "He never wanted to be a father." Elias looked away, anger tightening his voice. "He doesn't want to be one. He wants the leverage." Avery bit back a sob. "To control me, to erase you," Elias corrected. "Publicly, legally, permanently." Her breath shattered in her chest. She turned toward the window, palm pressed against the cold glass. Somewhere out there, under the same brutal sky, her son was alone, vulnerable, terrified, and the people who stole him were capable of anything. "We're almost there," the driver said, voice firm. Harlem rose before them, brownstones lined in quiet rows, snow blanketing the steps like untouched silk. The sedan slowed, headlights washing over a particular townhouse with drawn curtains and no lights. Elias placed a gentle hand on Avery's arm. "Listen to me. You cannot run inside blindly. Derek is unpredictable. Sabrina is ruthless. And the imposter, whoever he is, will be desperate, tender." Avery's voice trembled. "But Liam, we'll get him," Elias said. "Together." Before Avery could respond, another car appeared at the far end of the block. A sleek black BMW. Derek's. He stepped out, shaking snow from his coat, expression tight with annoyance rather than panic. Sabrina followed, phone pressed to her ear, whispering sharply. Elias cursed under his breath. "They're not supposed to be here yet. That means something went wrong inside." Avery's heart seized. "What do you mean wrong?" Before Elias could answer, a scream tore through the night. A woman's scream, high, sharp, horrifying, from inside the safe house. Avery lunged forward, but Elias grabbed her arm. "No, wait." The scream came again. Then a crash. Then silence. A chilling, unnatural silence. Avery turned to Elias, eyes wide with terror. "What was that?" she whispered. Elias stared at the townhouse, jaw tightening. "That," he said, was someone realizing they lost control. Yes. Then the front door of the safe house burst open, and a figure staggered into the snow, covered in blood. And the figure was carrying Liam. The figure stumbled into the snow-dusted street, breath ragged, scrubs torn and stained with blood. Avery froze, her entire world narrowing to the tiny bundle clutched in the woman's shaking arms. Liam. Her son. A cry tore from Avery's chest as she sprinted forward. Elias followed, shouting orders to his security team. But Avery heard nothing except the frantic pounding of her own heart. Melissa collapsed to her knees, her hands trembling violently as she held the infant out. I didn't hurt him," she gasped. "I swear I didn't. They didn't tell me what they planned to do. When I realized, I had to get him out." Avery scooped Liam into her arms, tears breaking free in hot, aching waves. His tiny fingers curled instinctively around her wrist. He was alive, warm, breathing. Her knees buckled, and she dropped to the snow, cradling him against her chest, as if she could fuse him back into her soul. "You're safe," she whispered over and over. "Mommy's here. Mommy's here." Behind her, chaos erupted. Elias's security team restrained Melissa. Derek lunged forward, shouting, "That's my son!" But officers intercepted him immediately. "You planned this," one officer barked. "We have recordings, bank transfers, staged footage. Everything. It's signed." Sabrina tried to run, darting down the block in heels unsuited for ice, but police tackled her within seconds. Screams tore from her as they snapped cuffs around her wrists. "It wasn't me. I didn't take the baby." "She did," she shrieked, pointing wildly at Melissa, but it was too late. Adrian held up the USB. "Now, evidence. We have your voice, Sabrina. You planned the disappearance. You scripted the setup. You manipulated hospital staff." Melissa's voice cracked. "She told me the baby's mother would never survive childbirth. She said the child would be better off with Derek." Avery held Liam tighter, nausea twisting at the thought. Officers turned to Derek next. He spat curses, twisting against their grip. "This is all fabricated. I'm the father. I have rights." Elias stepped forward, calm but lethal. "Not anymore. God." Adrian read from a printed document signed warrants, fraud charges, evidence of conspiracy, and the devastating footage of Derek and Sabrina pushing Avery 8 months pregnant into the snow. Every word landed like a final nail in Derek's carefully crafted empire. "You're done," Elias said. Derek's face drained, and in the shifting headlights, he looked less like a powerful man and more like a frightened child, with no one left to save him. Sabrina sobbed desperately. "We were supposed to ruin her reputation, not kidnap a baby." Derek said it was just publicity. Derek turned on her instantly. "You're the one who planned it." But neither of them mattered anymore, because Avery, still kneeling in the snow with Liam in her arms, was surrounded by warmth, the warmth of justice finally unfolding. Paramedics rushed over to check the baby. "He's stable," one said gently. "Cold, but stable." "You got to him in time." Avery's body sagged with relief. Elias knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. "You won." Avery looked up at him, breath shaking. "No, we won. I couldn't have done this alone." He smiled, genuine and warm. "You'll never have to be alone again." Liam let out a soft whimper, and Avery kissed his forehead. Weeks later, in a quiet courtroom, the judge awarded Avery full and permanent custody. Derek's parental rights were terminated. Sabrina faced multiple charges. Melissa cooperated and received leniency, entering witness protection. And when Avery stepped out into the corridor, holding her son securely, Elias was waiting. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. to start a new life. Avery nodded, tears shining, but this time they were from hope, not fear. "Yes," she said softly, "I think I finally am." Elias reached for her free hand, and for the first time in years, Avery walked toward a future that belonged entirely to her. A safe future, a deserved future, a future built from her strength and rebuilt by love. All right, my wonderful friends, if you're still here with me at this moment, after everything Avery went through, then something in her story must have touched your heart in a real, human way. Maybe it reminded you of your own battles, maybe of someone you love, or maybe it simply reminded you that strength isn't loud, it's built quietly, breath by breath, choice by choice. Avery's journey shows us that even when life feels unbearable, we still carry the power to rise. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Pain can shape us, but it doesn't get to define us. And sometimes, the people who try to break us end up becoming the very reason we become unbreakable. So, if you're listening now, let this be your reminder. You deserve safety, dignity, and a future that is truly yours. And healing is not a miracle, it's a decision you make every single day. If this story moved you, even a little, do me one small favor. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who might need strength tonight. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep walking through these stories and these lessons together. You're not alone. And you matter more than you know.